Back to Dostoevsky and the sign language of Aristotle. Um, so we were just talking about that as a possible opening into Dasein. That's just a expressionistic attempt, let's say, to loosen up our thinking on Dasein, which can be more. Again, I'll just leave it at saying more openness can be thought in this concept. It's not clear how we're to think it, and perhaps it's meant to be a doorway towards more openness and thinking. So we're just talking about Aristotle and motion. So we should clarify that motion should not be thought as physical motion. Um, Instead, motion means uh, sensu stricto. In a strict sense, motion would be the change brought about by the activation of any potential, where potential is understood according to the strict law of non-contradiction, where we can't have a potential which is contradictory. For instance, there's no potential for a four-sided triangle. But this holds only in the same way that the thinking of Aristotle, which has come down to the Arabic thinkers and been handed over and synthesized, especially by Thomas. Then Thomas says both that there's a limitation on God's potential by his intellect. So we can see in that statement of the potentia absoluta being ruled out, um, the same space where we're then insisting on this specific truth. That truth has a specific context, and so in this case, that the uh, potentia ordinata, so that God's ordering mind or the cosmos um, acts to secure the possibility that three-sided triangles are possible in many forms, in many particular forms, acute, obtuse, etc., in many accidental forms. But also it secures the thing on the other side, which actually the Megarians don't address in their denial of possibility, which is that various possibilities are ruled out, and in a way there's an infinite set, so to speak, of such possibilities. Um, And the one Thomas says, of course, is the one I've often mentioned, that even God can't make a triangle where the two right angles don't add up to all the angles of the triangle. But this goes over to not just mathematical concepts, but also all our physical concepts. So we should think in terms of this way, that this kind of certainty, this kind of apodicticity, has come down to us. In other words, the notion of rationality has come down to us and entered into the core of experimental science. So in every instance of experimental science is only half empirical, because it has to be guided by some ordering or cosmic potency or potential, whereby we understand what we're doing. When we run an experiment, we understand what the result means in some sense. Yes, people will always say, oh, no, we just look for the data and then we try to find it out, or something like that. But in some sense, so in the most extreme sense in physics, the data will only be ordered in the sense that it's measurable and nothing more. So then that's the extreme case. But in most cases, it's something that we do understand, and which is obviously has the human content. And so, of course, this goes for everything. Tying of the shoes is a potential, and there's nothing contradictory in the potential to tie one's shoes. But as the critics of, as sort of the uh, more silly critics of Catholicism like to point out, um, how can can't the omnipotent God, I don't know what they actually say, but I think an interesting example is, can the omnipotent God abdicate, step down from his throne? Apparently, this has been decided after long meditation by the theologians, that this is not possible. So that's one more of those things which would be contradictory if it were possible. So I think this shows, in this sense of the Dostoevsky's move against the what he calls the Greek philosophy, and also Greek beauty at the same time, because um, potentials have something beautiful in them quite often. And this follows us into experimental science, for instance, that one can build a spectrograph, and by looking at the colors in very remote stars that aren't even visible to the unassisted eye, um, we can discern what small particles exist in the most remote parts of the visible galaxy. And so there's something beautiful about that. Just as if we looked at something up close, and through the colors we could say, here is some helium, or here is some small particle. We can see in the most distant places where some particle is. So the potential to do that, of course, is a potential which is possible. And these potentials are then thought, I should have pointed out, so motion, these potentials are all matters of motion, and they're matters of things that are already, as it were, in motion and in possibility, in things as what can happen.